Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and broadcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. David, how is this good week of April 11th treating you?
So far, so good. It's been a busy week, and we've made some strides towards some new UI updates that I know the team is excited to implement. So give us a little time. They'll come out soon, and I think it's going to be really nice improvement. So we're excited about it.
Yes, marketing loves a new facelift on the software, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
But today, we're thrilled to welcome on Rod Boothby. He is the CEO and co-founder of IDPartner. I'm going to go ahead and pull him in. Welcome to the show, Rod.
Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah. Hey, Rod. We're happy to have you here. You and I have spoken before, but for our listeners and viewers that are out there that don't know about you or the company, love for you to kick us off and give everybody a little bit of background about you and your experience and what led you to become CEO of IDPartner and what IDPartner is doing today.
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Rod Boothby. IDPartner is bank-based ID. The idea is that even on an anonymous internet session or a Zoom session like this, I can prove that I am really me. The way I do it is just to say, ask my bank. I bank with Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo will tell you that I am who I claim to be. They've known me for more than 20 years. They follow me everywhere, and they can verify that it's really me on this session and not a bot or not some kind of deep fake pretending to be me. That kind of technology can be used everywhere. So my background, I started as a fixed income derivatives quant, actually. And to price those things, you need to code. So I leaked a lot of memory in C++ and ended up moving from there into technology. I co-founded a company called NPM. If there are developers listening to this, if you've ever typed NPM install, I helped set up NPM Inc. and the big infrastructure that supports distributing all of those packages. It's now part of Microsoft. I went on from that to be global head of identity at Santander, which is a massive bank based out of Spain with about 153 million customers. And it was there that I came across this challenge of how do we solve identity on the internet? And I became obsessed with figuring out how we can bring truth and trust to the internet. So that was the origin.
That's awesome. I mean, I love the idea of behind IDPartner because, like you said, it's getting harder and harder to sort of prove that someone is human, right? And that they are what they are. There's AIs and deepfakes and bots and all this stuff and hackers and so many things going on these days that we are put in a position where, it's going to become more and more important for people online to actually prove they are who they are, right? And I think that what you guys are doing is really nice solution to helping do that for companies so that companies can, sort of prevent the fraud that is out there.
Well, I think the thing that you kind of alluded to there, I saw a podcast with Mark Andreessen a little while ago, and he said, we're not going to be able to detect the AI. It is going to get to be an arms race.
Yeah.
So if we can't detect it, we have to come up with a different problem or a different solution. And the idea is to flip the problem rather than looking at 1 million users and trying to find the 2 or 3 bots out of 1 million. Enable most of those users, 999,000 of them, to say, I'm human. I can prove it. I can use a global, well-known, trusted system, the global financial system, and the banks that are there, super regulated, well understood, have those entities vouch for this. And that suddenly means that this really complicated problem gets whittled down to something that is much more manageable and much easier. Some people are going to need to remain anonymous for various reasons, and they will have a challenge proving that they are real. And then the nefarious folks or the bots will be easily identifiable.
Yeah, we've talked in the past about how sometimes it feels like we're getting in this world where bots are talking to bots already, right? I mean,
Yep.
you look at all the AI emails I get, and then people have AI tools that filter their emails, and so that these bots are then trying to get through that AI. So you have these two AIs that are basically challenging each other, and one is trying to get the email through, and the other one's trying to block the email from coming through, right? And so we're in that situation, whether it be email, whether it be social media, and all the different types of posts that you see today that can be auto-generated and they're fake, and you don't know what's actually real, and they're generated by AI. And so are the replies real? And you're sort of going through this entire thing, and look what Twitter, X,
Yep.
whatever you want to call them, went through with all the bots that they had. So it's, we something has to change, to your point. And I think that you're going down the right path, I think, in order to help, invoke that change.
The big thing that I realized at the beginning of this journey was that identity is property. You own your identity. It's the keys to everything else in your life, from your healthcare to the things you own. And it works like property. You can change your legal name. You still own your car. You can change your country of address. You still own the money in the bank account. Um, so thinking of identity as property becomes the way to unlock and solve this. So if it's property, it's valuable, clearly. You need somewhere to host and protect it. Use a financial institution. Um, and what they can do is they can host all the core facts about you, the things that in the identity space somebody might call a verifiable credential, the basic things like your birth certificate that says, we can't tell you how to recognize this human because right now they're a baby, but they were born in this place on this day. They have this sex at birth. They have this weight, these parents, and this name. That begins your legal identity journey. Everything else builds on top of that. And as it builds, you may go through a name change. About 40% of Americans change their name during their lifetime, either because of marriage or because somebody wants to be the next Elvis. And when they go through those changes, their property ownership still remains the same. The bank helps them to keep track of all of that. If the bank treats it as an asset, it can now then simply manage it like an asset, which means providing the risk management services that are associated with it. So I can guarantee that this person is who they claim to be online, etc. It's changing the way we think about it to come up with then something that's a very simple, easy solution.
Absolutely. And that's interesting. I never would have thought about having the financial institutions hosting all of that. But, really a brilliant idea. And so could you talk to us a little bit about bank-backed ID systems and building the digital trust there?
Sure. So, well, maybe I can tell you the story of how this all started. I was at Santander, and my title was a big one, but basically the job was to innovate on top of identity. And the bank said, figure out how to do better in this area. It was a very general remit. Um, I spent lots of money, and eventually somebody said, this is a cost center. And for me, that was a light bulb moment. Oh, wait a minute. This could be a profit center. This could be a valuable service where the banks can help people to trust each other. And actually, that goes back a very long way. It goes to the beginning of banking. Have you ever heard of the Banco de Medici?
No.
I have not.
So it was the first bank in Florence in 1397. Um, At the time,
I wasn't
traders
around back then, so
no,
that's
traders in the Mediterranean had to carry gold to conduct their trades. To protect that gold, they needed to hire mercenaries. One of the most famous mercenary groups was the Knights Templar. Um, Banco de Medici changed it. Instead of carrying your gold, you carried a simple letter of credit that said, you are who you claim to be, and you're good for the money. And if you don't pay, the bank will cover you. And so the bank used that to establish trust across the Mediterranean. The traders of Florence did a booming business. They made a fortune. The Medici family got really rich. And instead of buying expensive items like yachts, they invested it in a library that became the biggest in the world. And they backed thinkers like Michelangelo and Da Vinci. They created the Renaissance. They funded the Renaissance. And this was all out of the profits of a bank helping people to trust each other. And when they were able to trust each other, they were able to trade. And when they were able to trade, they thrived. What we need to do today is a modern version of that. So I realized the banks, just like they issue letters of credit, can verify that the person who's on a particular session is who they claim to be. Cool. How do we deliver that? The bank said, all right, it's a good idea. Go get a customer. So I talked to a guy called Ashish Jain at eBay. He was head of identity at the time, and he was really nice. He said, I love this. Buyers will trust sellers. Sellers will trust buyers. Everybody will be happier. He said, but you have to get all the banks. What? Banks. Okay. Why? Well, I mean, Santander is big, but it's only a small percentage of our customers. Okay, fair enough. So I went back and asked, how do I talk to all the other banks? It turns out there's an easy way. It's one of these organizations that some people may say is a secret organization that runs the world, except they're not secret. They're trying to tell everybody what they do. It's just that it's really boring. So nobody pays attention. I think it's really interesting, though. It's a group called the IIF, the Institute for International Finance. They're a partner organization to the IMF. And what they do is they help the banks to coordinate. The IMF helps governments and central banks when there's a crisis. The IIF helps commercial and retail banks to coordinate and handle a crisis. They also help them to be more effective generally and to coordinate across the industry in a way that doesn't contravene any antitrust laws. We set up a thing with particularly leadership of under a guy called Brad Carr, where we called it the Open Digital Trust Initiative. And the idea was, how can banks help deliver this service? Got lots of banks interested in it, designed the whole system, worked with the Open ID Foundation to design it on top of OpenID Connect and to come up with the right federation for it. All of that stuff led us to the situation of needing an operator. And that's why I started IDPartner. The other thing I learned when I was doing that, though, was we weren't the first. Somebody said, well, it's been done before. Okay, where? In Norway and Sweden. And they have a thing called Bank ID there. And it's changed everything. It's helped people to trust each other in a way that is extraordinary. I've seen data on it. Norway, people were asked, are most people generally trustworthy? That was the survey question. I was born in Zimbabwe. The answer in Zimbabwe, only 2% of people agreed with that statement. In the US, 37% of people agree with that statement. In Canada, it's about 56%. In Norway, it's 70%.
Oh, wow.
And it's not 70% because of a cultural reason. Remember, the Norwegians were Vikings, right? This is a invade and pillage kind of culture originally. They have built the infrastructure for trust. And they've done it with this simple bank ID system that allows them to verify, yep, that's really Olaf, and he's really pays his bills. And so it's there for everything. In Sweden, it's even there for pickleball.
Wow.
Have you guys, has pickleball invaded your lives?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Pickleball is it leads to riots where I am almost because people love it, but it makes a lot of noise, so the neighbors hate it. But you can go to a pickleball court in Sweden, and get a free balls to play and free rackets. Anybody can get them. You sign them out with your bank ID.
Hmm.
And they
Wow.
know it's you, and they know you'll return it because you identified that you were the person taking it.
Hmm.
So nobody steals the pickleball rackets. They have a high trust society because they've built the infrastructure to help people trust each other, just like Florence built it with traders. And they've been able to thrive because of it. And so that's why I think of this as digital trust.
Wow.
I like
Well,
it. I like
like
it.
it too.
And I truly hope it helps increase the trust in the US for sure. That's something we need to increase and improve upon. So I'm looking forward to that.
One of the things we've created is a thing called Not a Bot. So you can go to notabot.idpartner.com and you can verify that you're a real person. If you want, you can verify your name on X or on LinkedIn. You can do so without scanning your ID and handing over all of your information to a company that you might not trust. You use your bank. You choose who you trust, and you trust who you choose. I'd love to see that everywhere. And I'd love to see it so that the simple regulation for companies like X isn't that they have to control what people say. No, absolutely, free speech. But allow me as a consumer to say, I only want to hear from real people with real names that have been verified. And maybe I might come across somebody who's abusive or nuts or whatever, and I might not want to hear from them anymore. And because they've been verified, I know that if I say, hey, I want to block that person, I will never hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
But that means that I can trust the comments. I can trust everything that it's coming from a real person. Do you know Yuval Harari, the guy who wrote *Sapiens*?
Nope.
*Sapiens* is an interesting book about.
I have heard of the book actually.
Yeah.
I didn't know the name of the.
Yeah,
Right.
Yuval Noah Harari. The book describes the origin of modern humanity, and its theory is that what makes Homo sapiens, as opposed to like Neanderthals or others, different, what makes us unique is that we can coordinate across bigger groups, and we use stories, fictions, to do that. So, a space alien can't come down, land here, and see a government or see laws or even see rights. They're intangible concepts, but we can exchange and share them because we can tell each other these stories, and we will act upon them as though they are real, like the value of money or the validity of property. We'll act upon them if we trust them. We have to trust. And what this is doing, just like in social media, is building a new mechanism to allow us to more efficiently trust each other. Otherwise, we're in an ugly world where nation states, bad actors are constantly trying to manipulate us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I know you and I talked about this, and we're going to get off topic here, but I know you and I talked about this in our call. I work in the sort of in the advertising and marketing world, and one goal for us and across the entire advertising marketing world is to try to figure out a solution similar to what you're talking about in our space. Because our industry is struggling right now with trying to figure out how to manage identity across different media. How do you identify that a consumer is a consumer, that it's a real person, not a bot, that they are the same person that I'm seeing on their phone or that I'm seeing on their TV, so that I know that when I'm trying to advertise or market something to them, I'm reaching the right people. And so, I remember having a brief brainstorming session with you then about how, the challenge behind trying to apply something like what you have at IDPartner to this industry so that we can solve those problems, because it's a big problem and there's a lot of there's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of bots and click farms and all of these
Yep.
things that are creating fraud within the advertising industry, and it's hurting the industry as a whole and preventing marketers and advertisers from actually being able to reach real people at the scale that they need to.
So by flipping it and allowing people to opt in, but share valuable stuff. So I grew up in Toronto, and that makes me a Toronto Maple Leafs fan.
Oh no.
Which is miserable existence.
Well, as a Florida Panthers fan, we're going to be going head to head soon.
Yeah, we're gonna. A guy in Toronto passed away recently and had in his will that he wanted the members of the Toronto Maple Leafs to be his pallbearers, so they could let him down one last time. They have sold out every game since 1967. So they have no financial interest in actually winning because the fans are super loyal. Well, anyway, so I walk around with a Toronto Maple Leafs baseball hat, and it means that I can, or I have shirts and things like that. It means I can bump into other fans and commiserate.
Yeah.
I'm happy to tell sites that I'm a Toronto fan. And if that comes with some discount or some incentive for me to do so, it's easy for me to share it. That's a credential. That's a verifiable fact. If I go to a website like Yelp, and in Yelp, I log in and I use my bank-based ID to verify that I am really a real human. And then there's some discounts if I share a couple of facts about myself. So I'm a fan of this, and maybe I like those kinds of TV shows or this type of food, and I share those few things. Those are now, I am a much more valuable person on that platform. And when I go to provide a review for a product or a restaurant, I hope that that thing is treated with more credulity from other people. They trust it more than they would an anonymous review. And I think not only will it benefit marketers and advertisers to know that I am genuinely who I claim to be, and not only will they be incented to more precisely target me with maybe things that provide me with incentive, but it's going to help society more generally. You know, one of the ways to manipulate an election now would be to do so on Yelp. As soon as you go and you say, well, this restaurant used to be good, but because of the president's policies, it's terrible, or this restaurant is so much better because of the president's policies, you suddenly have this thing of everywhere things have become politicized. And who's doing that? We know that it's nation states that are not in favor of one candidate or the other. They're just trying to make our democracy dysfunctional. We are, as America, we are less capable of handling the challenges of the world when we can't have a meaningful conversation that isn't blown out of proportion. And I'm convinced that a huge percentage of the time that hyperbole, that anger, is being stoked by bad actors. I live in California. We had to do a trade show in Arkansas a little while ago. I heard the governor of Arkansas did a speech. So Sarah Huckabee Sanders is very far away from, you'd think, the political norm in California. Her speech would have gone down very successfully. She talked about giving teachers higher salaries and better reading scores and fewer kids per classroom. And there's a lot we agree on. Maybe there's a few things we disagree on, but we can solve problems without this overwrought grumpiness. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to just put real names on things.
Yeah. I think that's a really good segue into the next topic, because it's, fraud and lack of control and the flaws in the current system. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, this was a topic you wanted to talk about, and we've kind of segued a little bit into the whole fraud and the fact that we're losing control, right? And
Yep.
so share with us, what are your thoughts on this?
If I was, well, so first of all, as a person, as an individual, if I'm in control of my ID and I have one main identity system that I can use everywhere, it protects my privacy. It allows me to share things like I'm a sad Maple Leafs fan, but it doesn't force me to overshare things like, this is my driver's license and here's every single thing about me. That's valuable. That's very valuable to me as an individual, especially if that same system will do things like tell me, yeah, you are really on the real Yelp. So the way ID Partner works is that if you go to, if Yelp were to add us for an ID verification, they'd probably offer people other options, right? Scan your ID or answer some questions, both of which have their own problems. The scanned ID could be a deep fake. Your own questions about you are available. The answers are available on the dark web. But so instead, I verify my ID with my bank. My bank uses continuous active authentication to verify that I am who I claim to be. So it follows me everywhere. It knows exactly what device I'm using. It knows what networks I tend to use, what angle I hold the device, the typical response time from the camera, from the accelerometer, all of these different techniques. And there are dozens and dozens of them that they use to try and be certain that the person on this specific session is really the person they think it is, because they want to make sure that nobody's stealing anyone's money. And that doesn't happen very often with banks. No system is perfect, but they are damn near perfect. And that's why people trust internet banking, because it's rock solid. Because it's rock solid, it's a good basis to verify that the person on this session is who they claim to be. So we take that kernel, and it's something I know and I know I can control. That's me sorted. How about flip it around and think about it from the perspective of a business? So you're running a business, maybe, I don't know, you're running like a the next online must-have brand. The iteration beyond Supreme. What is it? I don't know. But this exciting brand, everybody wants to buy this stuff. You want to make sure your customers are who they claim to be. You don't want to lose 3% of your revenue to fraud, like most e-commerce businesses do today. You install bank-based ID. It answers 4 questions for you. The first question it answers is, who is the person on this session? Like, what are the facts about them? Their name, their address, maybe their affinity. The second question it answers is it really them on this session? The bank can recognize them. The third question the bank can share is, with the person's agreement, what's this person's behavior record like? Have they been reported for fraud in the past? Or do they always pay their bills? Or do they have a high rate of returning products? And then the fourth one is, if there is risk associated with it, the financial institution can step in and provide risk transfer. So what are the facts I can know about this person? Is it really them? Can you predict how they behave? And if there's any risk, can I transfer the risk? That's what it means to have full control in one of these situations. The user is actively in control of what they share, and the business has all of their core questions answered.
Yeah, I can see a ton of value there across, any online e-commerce system, everybody needs to, that's the biggest risk. That's the biggest one that everybody's, threatened by is losing out on revenue to
Yep.
fraud, having to deal with providing services, and then you're dealing with everything from, trying to track it all and figure out how it happened. And I know that it's a constant problem that, companies are constantly dealing with, that they're trying to figure out, okay, not only how much, fraud do they have, but how did it happen and how do we prevent it from happening? And
Yep.
if, as what you're describing is a solution that can, ultimately help prevent that for them.
It's the numbers are huge. Visa Verify says that 3% of e-commerce revenue is lost to fraud. So most e-commerce businesses only make a 10% profit margin. I mean, imagine if, the governor in your state said, hey, we're going to tax e-commerce businesses at a rate of 30%. We're going to increase their profit, taxes on their profit by 30%. People would be rioting in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
But they accept it when it comes to fraudsters.
Mm-hmm.
They shouldn't. What does that mean? That means Amazon's 30% more valuable. Etsy's 30% more valuable. But with this trust system in place, so is any mom and pop selling specialist, locally grown Iowa honey. Okay, great, wonderful products. Their bank's verified that they've got a great reputation. Every customer knows that they can buy from them. And they don't actually also have to pay a big tax, which is kind of a trust tax to Amazon. If people buy through Amazon because the search is there, but Google's got search. They buy from Amazon because, or they sell through Amazon because Amazon's got a good distribution infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so does UPS and FedEx. They sell through Amazon because customers trust Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't trust mom and pop honey seller in Iowa.
Right.
But the bank may have known this family for 50 years and know that they're good people and you can definitely trust them. And with that extra check, we kind of make our entire system completely more efficient. You can think of Amazon almost like a trust monopoly.
Yeah.
With all of these topics, Rod, they've all kind of come back to trust.
Yep.
I almost feel like we have a trust pandemic.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's really that's the core here. We have and it's because the internet was designed without an identity layer. It was designed for one computer to talk to another computer, but not to know who the users are. And we've been, with passwords and 14 other things, trying to bootstrap a way into solving this for years. Why not give up on solving it and instead use a globally well-regulated infrastructure, the financial system, that can actually deliver it? And the regulatory rails are interesting. You know that the FDIC has its own hotel? Have you ever heard about this?
No, I had no idea.
They are so big and they have to train so many bank examiners that they decided they'd save money by building their own hotel for training in Washington, D.C. Apparently, there's some other problems that came out of that. The trainees tend to booze up too much. There was a whole Wall Street Journal article about it. It was no good. But just passing a law to regulate digital companies isn't going to solve anything without the enforcement. Well, the enforcement's already there for banks. And it's there because the FDIC and the Fed and all these other agencies are there, but it's also there because Ernst & Young and Accenture and Deloitte are all there, and because we've had 100 years of it. It's even in our movies, right? What's Jimmy Stewart, the movie where he, I'm blanking on the, It's a Wonderful Life. There you go. It's even fundamental to like American culture going back that far.
Yeah.
We know what these institutions are and how they run. Let's just use them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you made such a good point about the internet being built so computers can talk, but not so that you know who's behind the computer. And I think that that is one of the biggest challenges today, is that you don't know who's behind the computer, the phone, whatever.
Yep.
And all of these devices are talking to each other. And again, to the point of the fraud and hackers and all that stuff, we don't know if it's a real person or not. And so I think that in itself is the root of the cause of the problem, right? It's just, it was never designed from the ground up to be sort of purpose built for identifying the person behind the device. And now we have to sort of, figure out, what is the best mechanism to do that. And I think you found it, and I think that the biggest challenge here now is integrating with systems so that, it is universal. Because it works best if it's everywhere, right?
Well, absolutely. So that's what we've built with IDPartner as a first pass at that. We've connected to 8,000, 9,000 banks in the US, UK, and Sweden. Those are the first 3 countries we're live with. We're adding Canada, Australia, and we hope to add any country in the world. And it's all the things that go wrong with the internet. It's the fraud, it's the extortion through ransomware, it's the damage because you've lost data, it's the threat of theft of IP, it's harassment, invasion of privacy, misinformation,
Yep.
exploitation, cyber terrorism. All of those things all have one underpinning thing: the bad guys cloak themselves in anonymity before they do the bad thing.
Yep.
If we can figure out a way that it starts to quantify that and create a feedback loop using a system that we know and trust, hopefully we can. I'm sure we won't be able to fix it all, but if we can reduce it for integrating us for our business, it's easy. If people go to idpartner.com, our stuff is. Well, we were working with a customer identity and access management platform called Dscope. It's recently raised an extraordinary, I think it was $53 million seed round, a really good platform. They were able to integrate us in 12 minutes.
Mm,
It's very easy.
It's amazing.
that is amazing. Yep. Well, Rod, I know we're low on time, but I do have to tell you too, you were saying, how can we quantify this? But I really have to acknowledge you in the story you told us. And maybe it's qualitative data, like the story you just told us, because that was really powerful in building trust and hearing how this worked in the past.
Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting if you think about it from the Medici family all the way up to entire countries like Singapore. What's Singapore famous for? It's a place to do business. What happens when you show up there? People keep their word. They have a system called SingPass. It's a government-based version of this. You can trust people in Singapore. They are going to keep their word. You're going to be able to do business. You're going to be able to do business effectively, simply. People thrive when they can trust each other, even if they're way up north in Norway.
Well, I know that we can thrive because I trust you and what you're going to tell us about tech stack. This is something we ask all of our guests on deconstructing data. And I'm curious, what tools do you trust?
Well, maybe what tools I find useful. It's not that below the radar, but one of the things I really like is an email client called Superhuman, and really recommend it. Superhuman allows you to more efficiently manage your inbox. It's got a very simple hotkey system, a very simple system of being able to whiz through your stuff. I find that I can get very close to inbox zero with it consistently. It's definitely one of the best things out there. At least for me, I've found it a good life hack. And otherwise,
Good one for sure.
yeah. The other thing that we're working on, this is something that is available currently as a plugin, but we hope one day will be directly integrated. Is a way to verify that the people on a Zoom session, especially if you're talking to bankers about moving money, are who they claim to be. And so IDPartner has a plugin for Zoom. And you can actually, on the Zoom session, see a verification at the bottom that says this person was just verified by that bank.
Wow.
Very simple, very easy. And with that in place, you know that for example, the wire instructions are being given to you by the real person, not a deep fake.
Absolutely. Those are some good tools. Thank you so much for sharing. And in closing, Rod, would you like to tell the listeners how they could reach you after the show?
Sure. Best way to get in touch with me is, if you want to talk to me directly, is rod@idpartner.com. If you want to check out what we're doing, idpartner.com, or check out notabot.idpartner.com to experience what it would be like yourself using the system. You can prove that you're not a bot on X or on LinkedIn.
I love that name, not a bot.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yes, that's definitely a good one. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you both.
Rod. Yeah,
really
thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
We really appreciate you joining us today. This has been a great episode. I think our listeners got a lot of interesting stories from someone we can trust.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. And real quick before we go, audience members, we invite you to get powered by BDEX, so you can discover our best-in-class identity technology and Omni IQ and how it will enable you to forge deeper connections with your audience. So just imagine taking all the power from AI to build your audience that truly resonates with your brand, and it ensures that your marketing efforts are hitting the goals. So that's what we want to help you with. So visit bdex.com. I'll put a QR code on the screen for anyone who is watching. So check out our QR code. If you are on podcast, just go to bdex.com and click the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. And then also, for those of you curious about the Deconstructing Data podcast, we are open to sponsorship opportunities, and we're just an email away. And you can also email us if you know someone who should be a guest on the show. We would love to hear from you. Just simply email us at info@bdex.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make this better for you. Thank you so much again, Rod, for joining us.
Thank you. Be well. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.